Are you guys ready for more C++ action? I am. Why you shouldn't nest your code. We watched this 2 days ago, 3 days ago, something like that. And we were complaining about the naming in these examples that he gave. And I was hoping that he made a video how to name things after this video, but he didn't. He actually did a video before this. So we complained about the naming, and I thought it would be cool to, you know, look at the video naming things in code. This is another C++ video. So buckle up, boys. We're gonna have awesome discussions, mature discussions. No one calling each other, you know, a moron or someone that doesn't know how to code, you know. Just mature discussions. You're no longer writing code. Change your category to just chatting. Okay, so it's gonna take probably about 25 minutes. So we're gonna ban this guy for 25 minutes. So we can have a nice little discussion here. Okay. Truth equals ban.
The classic quote is, there are only 2 hard things in computer science. Cache invalidation and naming things.
Naming things is oftentimes really difficult, especially when you're not natively English. You're banned. I'm not muted. 7 minutes. Okay.
I do agree that these are hard to get right, but they're also easy to get wrong.
Code aesthetic. Okay.
We're going to talk about what I consider to be bad naming practices. Practices that if you avoid, you'll force yourself into better naming. The classic first example you'll see is you shouldn't name variables with a single letter.
Yes. Yes. Very important. So I'll give you an example for why you shouldn't do that. Let's call that choice index. For example, here, it is much easier, especially in loops, where you have multiple loops in loops. And yes, you can have that. Yeah, well, if you're never nester, maybe not. But it's much easier to have the index tell you what you're talking about, because maybe you reuse the index later. And then it is not just a generic I or J or K, because then you don't know what you're talking about. And oftentimes you can use this index to determine that you're looping over, in this case, a choice. Now, this is also not a great name because it's an unlockable hero choice. So I should probably call this hero choice index. That would be, I think, the best name for this. So yeah, they need to be more descriptive, because then you can read it more like a book. And I agree. Yeah, it's a good idea.
I suspect this originally came from when math and computer science were more or less the same. Mathematicians pride themselves on being terse. They like to crystallize down to the smallest, most concise way of expression.
Yeah.
The thing is, you don't need to edit math, but you do need to edit code. So it's become obvious to programmers that we should avoid using single letter
Sorry.
code. So it's become
this is terrible to read. Like const s, that's like a split string, so he doesn't have like a name for a substring, I guess. And then pass cookie n is a string. Yeah, I mean, this is a cherry-picked example, of course. You would pass in the cookie string. You would call it cookie string instead of n.
It's obvious to programmers that we should avoid using single letter variable names.
I don't even think that anyone, like if someone, does someone even write code like this? N?
It's become obvious to programmers that we should avoid using single letter variable names because they don't tell you anything about the variable. But I'd argue that you should take this one step further. You should never abbreviate names, period.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
Look at this code. Can you tell me its purpose?
Oh god. GW, YW, DW, green, yellow, white, doofus, MOV, M1, M2. Oh god. No, actually I don't even know what, I would need to read the code and then maybe gen. Oh god, that's terrible. Okay, what is it doing?
What about now?
Wait, genre? Wow, okay, yeah, I see. Movie 1, movie 2. Wow, okay, I couldn't tell at all. Lol.
Abbreviations rely on...
How many of you in chat figured this one out? I bet 0. Right? Looks like obfuscated code, yeah. It's like trying to... Yeah. Me? Okay, you're banned. You're banned, Rico. 5 minutes. Liar. Anyone else? I did. Not at all. Yeah, because I could be any program. It could be any program. Me, smiley face. Okay, bro.
On context that you may or may not have. You spend more time reading code than writing code.
True.
So forcing yourself to understand per system naming patterns makes it much harder to dig into unfamiliar code. Abbreviations used to help because of two reasons.
This YouTuber is clueless. I really don't like him. You would not work on or with this function without context. So this example again is bogus. I mean, I can't really talk to that, but his point is still correct though. He just made an example. Even if you had context, you would still use movie 1 and movie 2.
It saved you typing. And screens were 80 characters wide. But now when we write code, we get this. It takes less.
If you don't use Visual Studio Code, yeah, you get that most of the time, yeah. If you don't use Visual, I don't know about other editors, but I don't get that often. I have to wait. I hate it.
Keyboard strokes than ever to write variable names.
I hate it.
And we have massive 4K screens now, so there's no real advantage to abbreviation.
Goodness.
Don't put types in your...
No one reads that, bro. Like, who types like... Tell me one person in the universe that writes code like this. You're gonna be wearing glasses by the end of your first programming year if you write code like this. Yeah, you can't see anything. I do. You're lying. You're lying. Absolutely not. He has a big screen. Also, you're saying that my screen is small and that's why I got a 4K screen and my phone is big as fuck. Okay, I guess. Okay, so on a 4K screen. Okay, I can get behind that. But on my screen, hell nah. It's too small.
There's no real advantage to abbreviation. Don't put types in your name. If you've edited older code on Windows, you'll see something called Hungarian notation. This is where you'd prefix the type to the variable name.
I don't like that. I hate it. It's annoying. I wouldn't do this at all. Boo is valid. Like, come on. Choose a better name.
I think this goes back to before we had good standard types in C. So everything would basically be an int. And the type of the variable wouldn't actually tell you what was inside of it.
I see.
But
It
now,
could be it.
with statically typed languages, the type should tell you exactly what you're looking at. So
I hate int32t as well, man. I fucking hate that, bro. Like, who thought about this? Why not just signed 32? Unsigned 32. So S32, U32. Yeah, long pointer to a character string. Exactly, kitten. Yeah.
putting types in your variables is no longer necessary.
Yeah.
Related, it's considered good practice to put units in your variable names. For example, if you have a function that accepts a delay time, if this value is in seconds, you should name the variable delay seconds.
I can get behind that. I do have delay in my game too, but I don't use seconds. I can understand why. So for example, attack delay. We have attacks per second and attack delay here. I can understand why, but Cakez. The only time prepending B to a variable name is for an out of bounds check, because then it's called boobs. I see. Okay, that's a good point, Mr. Travis. Aha. I get it now. True. Yeah.
This way, it's clear to the user of the function that they better be putting in seconds.
But when would a delay not be in seconds?
It's
can
also
be in milliseconds. It can be in milliseconds. You guys are right. Yeah. In very, like in the game. You guys are right. Maybe this is a good thing. Yeah.
More clear to someone editing the class itself what unit they're working with.
Class or function.
But even better than that is to have a type that removes the ambiguity completely. For example, in C#, the time span or chrono.
I don't like that at all. Why? How does time span now tell me that this is seconds? Why is a time span not milliseconds? Now I need to learn the type because the code itself doesn't tell me what type it is or what unit it is. That's bad. That's actually bad. Like, we took something, so we came full circle, right? We came from here we don't know what unit it is, and then we get to here, and we don't know what unit it is again. Times 10 can be many units. Yeah, that's the point. Okay.
You need to explicitly ask for a unit back. Like here, getting seconds back.
Yeah, it's like... I see the points, but come on. Like, why not just have the execute function take in seconds and then, I mean... I have a point. Okay, so for those of you who will get angry in the video, I have a point for you. If you have header files, because you guys like header files so much, and you don't write this into... you have like a class where you have function definitions and function implementations. The function definition will not tell you what it takes in. So the time span example here is not that good because you don't see the code at first glance. You only take a look at the headers, the definitions. You don't take a look at the implementations. So if you had a definition that took in seconds, you knew exactly what it's going to take in. Now you have to take a look. You hear me here? You could feel me? You feel me?
For dynamically typed languages like Python, you sadly can't rely on typed declarations to help.
Yeah, I mean, you need to have good naming there, yeah, I guess.
So we'll need a bit of help from the variable name.
This to this part talking about TypeScript, not C++. It doesn't matter. Any typed language has the same issue. Whether it's C++ or TypeScript, doesn't really matter. Typing is the same.
Interestingly, people also add types to their types.
Huh?
In C#, there's this pattern of prefixing interfaces with I. This is
I like that, actually. I think that's an interesting idea. Interface file saver.
Something I have never understood.
Why?
Good code uses interfaces all the time. And the consumer doesn't really care whether it's an interface, class, or abstract class. They just want to know what they can call. In this code, we animate an object on the screen.
This is game. Okay, movable. Okay, whatever that is. So then you have a vector 3 start and target position, I guess. And then position animation, movable, whatever that is. I guess this is like an object, huh? Could be a circle, could be a rectangle, could be, I guess, a 3D object, like a quad. Is a quad a 3D object? That's not true. A box. Sorry about that. No, not a box. A cube. Sorry. Yeah, cube. English. Okay, not first language. Cube and then Kugel in English as well. Sphere. Sphere. Yeah, a sphere. Yeah, and we want to move towards the target. And then movable. Aha. Okay, so this is like the... This is the setup code. This is like the initialization code, and then this is the step code, like the you call every frame. I get it now. Okay, so I was confused, like why is it assigning stuff? Yeah, I'm not very good with classes. I don't use them very often. I just usually have like a struct that has this, then I fill in the data into the struct, which is I guess this function, and then I call step. Yeah, okay. Constructor, yeah,
this is an interface. If I swap this to an abstract class or a concrete class, it wouldn't change this code, nor would it help the code do anything better. C# is still following this pattern, even for new .NET library code.
I think you can get around this by just not having much inheritance, and then you don't have this issue, even. Yeah.
So for your C# code, it might
I like to prefix all my functions with function underscore, so anytime I need to call any function, I say like function underscore do thing, because it helps me know something is a function. This guy's just trolling, is he? This guy is not for real. Shut the fuck up, okay?
Sense just to follow the pattern, since bad style guidelines are better than no style guidelines. For other languages, I definitely avoid. Another example of typing their types is if you find yourself naming a class with base or abstract. This I've never found in a standard library. If I have a truck class and then realize it might make sense to create a parent class instead, I've seen folks name the new parent class base truck. This isn't a great name because it doesn't help the users of the class. It still represents a truck. if you ever find yourself unable to come up with a good name for the parent class, it probably means that we should actually rename the child class instead.
Yeah. If we need two different trucks that have different data, but when will you have two different trucks? So like my question here is, when would a truck have something that another truck doesn't have? Like it's still two trucks. Like this is the eternal example of I have a bird and then one bird is different than the other bird and therefore I have the base bird. And then one bird can fly and the other bird cannot fly. I just, for me, it's very difficult to understand these examples because for me, two birds, they just are designed with, what is that called? Flags, essentially. So a flag would just be a bit array. And then if flag 1 is set, the bit 1 is set, then the bird can fly. That's how I see it. And instances of birds have different colors. That's how I see it. And then different kilograms. It's difficult for me to understand these examples, but I guess his point is that truck is not very descriptive. This could be a monster truck, and then the base class is a truck. Right.
Let's just name it truck. Yeah. And for the child class,
trailer truck, yeah.
Let's over-specify the name. We'll call it a trailer truck. Now, if someone gets a truck, they understand what they're getting. But, specify the name.
We still have gas acceleration and brake acceleration. You have that on other trucks too, you know? So, like, this data would be in the truck.
We'll call it a
Cakez, you could do it in your 2D, a base hero class that extends into mage, defender, etc., but they all have stats. They all have a sprite. They are all exactly the same. They just have different stats. Like, there's no point in doing this. Immo truck, I truck for an interface and base truck for an abstract class if you must use inheritance in the first place. Interface truck for the inheritance and then the base truck for the abstract class. Different talent skills. It's an array of skills, bro. I don't see inheritance being needed there. I just have an array of skills on the mage. And they are different than the array of skills on the defender. Don't see the reason to have inheritance.
Trailer truck. Now, if someone gets a truck, they understand what they're getting. It's a truck. And they don't need to know about any of the details of subclasses. Yeah. And if they need to know a specific type of truck, well, then they get the specific name.
I tried this in the past, by the way. This stupid, so what I tried to do, and I hated that so much. So I wanted to have different types of windows for UI, okay? And then I wanted to have a list of windows somewhere. And these could be generic windows, right? Because I didn't know what type of window I would have open in the game. And so obviously I need to hold a list of open windows, but they all were different windows, right? So sometimes I had, I don't know, a window that has, that was a modal, that you could close by clicking the X button, but then otherwise other times I had just a window that you couldn't close with the X button. And so these were two different windows. And then I needed to create an array of, and window was the base class, of base class window pointers, I think, or references. And then I would need to, when I wanted to know which type of window I was using, I needed to have a window type, I think. You needed interfaces. It was so difficult to understand and get into this because I was new to C++. I was Googling this for days. Because now you have a generic window pointer array. It was so weird. I still don't understand this to this day. But I stopped looking at it. I just made a window with different stats. So I just had windows.
A specific type of truck? Well, then they get the specific name. Sometimes if you're struggling to name something, it's actually indicative that the code structure is to blame. A common anti-pattern I see is if there's a collection of functions used widely in the codebase, but it's all bundled up into a single utils class or module. If you're thinking of naming code utils or helper, you should think if it's really the right spot for it.
I think he's right here. So util functions would be string functions, for example. These should be bundled in a string context. So split string or index at, you know, to get like the index of a word or the find word in string or something like that. I will not remove my utils.
Here's some code from a Node app that processes movies. There's a bunch of util functions here.
But this would just be in the movie, in not Utils. This would be movie related.
Firstly, we should consider whether some of these methods actually make sense as a part of their respective types instead. So this code here, we can actually just move into the movie class itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would have like a movie struct and then movie related functions to this, but that's just my style, yeah. And then I would have movie, I don't know, find movie or something. Do they get used someplace else? Difficult to say.
For some of these, we can instead create a class
not.
that represents a collection of movies. And that has the desired methods.
Movie collection, I see, I get it now. Mm-hmm.
And finally, some of these can be separated into other classes with descriptive names. The paging functionality can be moved into its own class.
Pager? Pager has movies? Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we can even make this generic if we want, so that it can operate on more than just movies.
Yeah, that would make more sense. And the
cookie function should really just be in a cookie class. Now we don't have anything in our utils class, so we can just delete it.
I think I like this actually.
You don't see a bundle of utils in standard libraries, because they can all be sorted into modules that have good names.
That's actually smart, yeah.
So we should do the same in our code.
Yep.
These few rules will help you write code that is easier to read and change.
But you still sometimes have issues with some names, you know, you just don't come up with a good name. But I guess that's just part of programming. Cool. And looking at chat, we don't really have that crazy...
The classic...
We don't really have that many arguments in chat, except for this. This was very... This is like hit or miss for most people. Either they like doing this or they don't. That's what I come to understand, yeah. I honestly don't agree. Make utils until you have multiple functions that belong together and move it out of utils. Until then, use utils to bundle global stuff that needs to be reused by many classes. Yeah, so I would call utils your own library specific to your project. For example, what I have here is this utils class, you could say, or utils header file. And this is specific to what I do in games. I have a unique ID, a log function for music or for volume, logging. And so this is essentially the utils class that I have, but it's all separated in their own kind of chunks. So array has their own functions. And then once we are done with array, we go into math stuff. You could call this utils, right? I just have these functions there without a namespace. I call it helpers. Yeah, helpers, right? Just helper functions that help you in your project. I bundle these together in a file and then section them into sections. And if I don't have a section, which didn't happen so far, I create a new section. That monster is a header file, yeah? So any file that needs one or two of those has to compile the whole thing. Yeah. And you know how long it takes to compile this, Trenko? There's a website you can call Chrome Tracing in the Chrome browser. Then you can load a JSON file. And in my Tangy defense JSON right here, this is where I can figure out how long source code took to compile. Let us try to find 170 milliseconds to compile. And the longest one of this was stdio. Okay, just to finish the video. If you do happen to like this guy and you want to support him, obviously, yeah, he does good videos, okay? So please don't be too negative about this. He has a Patreon set up with 1,300 members, a lot of members. If you want to follow his Patreon, it's right here. This is the best way, and this right here is the video. If you want to watch it yourself and give it a like, there you go, there's the video. I always like watching these because everyone has so many different opinions, but ultimately what is the most important thing that I always want to stress out when talking about this is, please, if you make a game at least, or a product for customers, what is most important is the customer. The customer needs to enjoy your product. And therefore, it is your job to make the product as good as you can. And however you want to do that is up to you. In terms of games, that would be Undertale is the best example. Terrible code, but massively successful game.